We got ourselves a batch of shinies, Commander.
Welcome to Coordinated Fire, episode 20, a Star Wars Shatterpoint podcast, where tonight we have the pleasure of actually speaking to a Canadian winner of a Canadian Grand Tournament. Gentlemen, how are we doing tonight?
Guys, that's me.
That's a you, sir.
It's taken far too long.
It has.
Doing good.
Doing good. Too long.
Third or fourth stab here, I think.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Hamilton, third stab.
There's been a few.
Yeah, it's been a few. It's been a few, but it's nice.
4 sounds right.
I'm pretty sure it's 4. We are recording tonight on a Thursday. We usually record on a Monday for a Thursday release. Real Life and Work has our fantastic editor, Mr. Kyle Russell, a little busy this week, but you are listening on a Friday, almost 1 week post Force Convergence, which was our official AMG Grand Tournament that we held on October 4th and 5th. At Torchlight Games and Hobbies, if you didn't know that already from the last number of weeks of episodes. An absolutely fantastic event that went, from my side of things, very, very well. Torchlight, I think, solidified for me their absolute number one spot as the premier event space for running a large tournament like this. The tables were fantastic. We were able to actually source terrain from them, got a lot more from the community, but overall, everybody felt that the space was fantastic. Things ran very, very well. Lunch was great. The store stock was stuff. For me as a TO, I don't think when I'm running a grand tournament in Ontario, I'm going to be going anywhere else. Gentlemen, what was kind of your overall experience of the weekend? Titus, we'll start with you, bud.
So I had a great time, but I didn't make the top cut. And what was really nice was being at a very well-stocked venue, so I could go do some retail therapy to make up for not getting to play day 2.
Ooh, spent some dollars. Cha-ching. Nice.
I ended up getting all the boxes I was missing, and I also got myself one of the new Halo Flashpoint releases, and it was all right there on the shelf. It was great.
A well-stocked store. Who would have thought? Kyle, what was your overall takeaway?
Honestly, Flashpoint's turned into a really cool game. It's been the support this has been getting from Mantic, and I think there's just the right amount of hype around it. And there was a Flashpoint event actually happening while the GT was happening on Saturday, which hopefully gives some context in how large this space is, because couldn't even hear it, was on the other side of a room.
There was also a 40K event, wasn't there?
Not
there was
the event, but I think there was like games happening.
Yeah, it was a lot of different games happening.
Yeah, Saturday was packed.
What an incredible space. Before I go too far past the intro here, thank you guys for just moving things around to move our recording night. I appreciate it. And for context for everybody, I went directly from the GT into our national sales conference for work. And for anyone that's ever been to a national sales conference, this has been a week. But both events were incredible. Just happened to be back to back, and I am excited to be home and a little better rested.
It worked out anyway. I was horribly sick all Monday, so I wouldn't have been able to record anyway.
So Titus continues his perfect streak of not missing an episode.
And I apparently dodged 2 housemates that were sick Saturday and Sunday as well. So being on the couch on the other side of the house was primo, apparently.
Yeah, I was very, very nervous because I know a few people walked away with the post-event ick.
Yep.
And was not prepared to go through this week being sick, and fortunately made it through. But overall, the GT was incredible. What a just incredible reminder that our community is just fantastic. And I say that from both a Ontario players community, from a Coordinated Fire community. It was really awesome to see the Discord and see people following along and asking for the updates on how the events were going. Got a ton of messages throughout the day just asking about certain games. So it was really cool to kind of have that support from afar. We had John Dingleberry travel up, who was just an absolutely incredible dude.
Such a cool guy. It was great to meet him.
Brings very nice gifts as well, too. Totally unexpected. Brought me a bottle of bourbon as a thank you for TOing the event. Thank you, John. That was absolutely unnecessary, but it has been cracked already, and
Yes.
I'm quite enjoying. Yes.
He definitely made the longest trek up to the event. Just seeing how welcoming our core community is, seeing how the range of players from people that have been grinding out the reps to this, to some players that haven't had some practice lately, but are very familiar with Shatterpoint, to some newer players that came in to just get some games in and
Grab some promos.
try out that first event,
Yeah,
and just collect some really cool promos. And it was really awesome and thank you, Sean, for having above and beyond that GT kit of store kits, the league kits to have. It's really nice when everybody just gets to walk away with something.
I felt really, really bad. The product for the GT prizing, and I don't think this is something that is new news to anybody. And it's kind of out there within the community, so I'm okay actually commenting on it a little bit. I didn't want people to go home just with that stuff. And so when Will from Torchlight had mentioned, hey, I can grab these new 2 league kits, do you want these? I was like,
hell yeah.
Yes, that is exactly what we need. Some little Ziploc bags, and those bags were stuffed with stuff. And I asked everybody post-event, hey, I hope everybody had fun. And most of all, hopefully you felt good value for money, right? Because we did charge $40 for this one. And the feedback was unanimous that yes, holy cow, like totally good, value for money. And that's important for me as a TO as well, too. That's why we moved, I think, exclusively to raffle prizing as well, too. That again, like you said, Kyle, those people that come on the more casual end or haven't played for a while can feel like they're leaving with just like a whole bunch of stuff. And that was the goal.
Overall, incredible event. Great games throughout. I don't think there was much of an incident of any kind. I think everybody I talked to had a ton of fun. Sean, you'd have a more clearer picture of that, but overall,
yeah, everything was great. Everything was cool. Most of the judge calls were ranges, distances, shove angles. I think the 2 most common judge calls I got was about Plo's identity, and then 7 scorched, their protection and steadfast were the 2. I got 2 or 3 questions about those ones specifically. Past that, everybody played their games, no problems. We had most games go right to full time, but I think that was, again, maybe some people who hadn't played for a while and were just a little bit slower on their turns and their reps, which is perfectly fine. But overall,
and just to clarify there, that was every round had a game or 2 that went close to time. Not every game went to near time.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely some quick ones.
Oh, yes. Yes, there was. Absolutely. If you were playing boss, I guess, right?
Oh, no, I was thinking of my round 2 game against Cam. That one went pretty quick.
Yes, that one did go quick for you. Yes. Awesome. Yeah. Do we want to run through kind of some stats, lists, kind of meta type of stuff from the event? Because there were some things I think that were kind of status quo, but some surprises as well.
Yeah, so I think as the quick remark, definitely the things that we're expected to see. And I say that from both where the meta currently sits and where our community typically sits. Our community has always been very heavy Rebels and Republic, and turns out both of those things are real good right now. So it kind of lined up with what we're seeing most places, where in the past it still looked like this, but didn't quite line up to what we were seeing some other spots. Huge amount of Cassian. Cassian was actually not the most brought primary, but was certainly the most played primary. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact that a lot of the Cassian lists were Cassian anchor lists. If you brought Cassian, it was very likely that you were intending on playing Cassian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Almost. Every round. Yeah. Yeah. I'd agree with that. Yeah. When I looked at these stats kind of the day before, because obviously I had access to that, I looked at it and I was like, yep, this is a very atypical Ontario Grand Tournament.
And I mean, it looks kind of like the UK one we covered recently, to be honest.
Very similar.
Slightly different distribution, but
we seem to have a lot of crossover with those guys in the UK, for sure.
I have to say, I'm not a fan of how homogenous it was. Like, I enjoy the Republic. I played it all weekend, and I was playing it like 2 months heading up to it. But when you go walking around the room and every table looks the same, it's It lowers the excitement a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. And I don't know how you guys feel about how quickly we've gotten here compared to the Iden Kanan meta. I think that one took a little bit longer. This seems to have happened quicker.
I don't know. I feel like apart from Delta, this has been like it's been several months. I don't think it's actually as quick as it feels.
Okay.
Delta becoming as prevalent as it is, I think is more.
He's definitely quick.
Yeah, like that's abnormal. But Cassian becoming as dominant as he is, that's doesn't surprise me. He's been out since what was it, February? No, May. It was May.
Yeah, it was just before the rebalance. But
Yeah.
that is, yeah, like we're some time into this. And I think, when you look at all the way back to TBO pre-rebalance, I think Titus's win for TBO was one of the first Cassian wins, and it kind of it was a bit of a slow spark then, and then I think rebalance hit, and people went back to a lot of favorites that they were able to get on a table. But there's been a lot of events this summer. Like this has been an absolutely incredible amount of GTs, and then we have absolutely seen the rise. And we'll dive a little deeper into kind of a meta discussion at the end here, but there's no reason not to bring Cassian, to be honest. Like again, especially if you want to play Rebels,
Yeah, you're
at
handicapping
the
yourself.
very
at this point.
least. Yeah,
But like,
Yeah, you're
if you're
not
playing
playing Cassian,
Scoundrels, though, like if you're playing Scoundrels, you bring Cassian.
Yes.
If you're playing, I don't know, just like a good stuff list, you bring Cassian. Heck, you could bring Cassian in a tiebreaker list for Empire and be very happy with it. Like it's.
I tried.
He's the primary that
tried
brings a ton. And again, the 9 squad points is a huge factor in that, just from enabling lists that couldn't exist otherwise, and having an identity that is tagless across the board. The dude brings a lot to the table, and I think part of the reason why I think you see so much Cassian is I think Cassian brings a different thing to two different groups, right? You have I'm playing Rebels and I'm here to play competitively, and I think Cassian's the best pick there. But you also have this board-wide revenge trigger that I think is very forgiving, that I think can be a pretty good equalizer in a game where you may be a bit behind. So I think it's really easy to gravitate towards a Cassian-style list when you are heading to your first event, or you are, maybe I haven't kept super up with the meta, but doing something when my things get wounded is always good. And I think it's really easy to just shove Cassian in there, and you get a few practice games in, and yeah, this feels pretty good. I think it builds a list
And
with a
don't
pretty high
forget,
floor.
Don't forget he's also the headliner for the best Star Wars content we've had in years.
Oh yeah,
So like
yeah,
there's
and
that too.
is a thing too. Yep, I'll agree there. Sure. Yeah. So what did we see that's kind of stuck out as both I don't want to say atypical, but I guess maybe the stuff that surprised us. To me, I'll start off, no Cad Bane at all.
No.
Usually
Cad Bane was a
somebody
surprise.
within our group, within our area, takes Cad Bane. Lando was another one that was surprising as well too. We usually see a couple Landos. And then womp womp, Mr. Admiral Thrawn. I don't know if that one's too surprising. Thrawn's is a high skill, high ceiling primary that I think maybe in our local area, I was really the one that was kind of championing him.
I was gonna say usually
bit.
It's the Sean guy that plays him. But,
yeah, so I mean that's not surprising. But no, Cad Bane was kind of like eyebrow raiser for me, at least on the mission wise. Shifting priorities 9, Sabotage Showdown 8, First Contact 6, because we have a bunch of masochist crazy people in our community. And 5, Never Tell Me the Odds.
I played so much First Contact.
Yeah, I saw a lot of First Contact. Yeah, which is very, very
There was a
interesting.
lot of First Contact in the top cut. Which
There was. That as well.
Make of that what you will.
Boss, 21 games played, 8 wins, 13 losses for a 38% win rate. When I saw people talking about what they were bringing this GT within our local chats and discords, it was a lot of, hey, got my Delta built, hey, got my Delta painted. And I think through the games that the three of us have played and some of the other kind of areas that we've been speaking, weren't exactly sure if an quick audible to Delta Squad was, I don't want to say correct, but with the amount of time was a great thing to do.
Yeah, so I definitely
No, the
wanted
play
to
lines
touch
on
on
that
this.
list are tough.
So Titus, you absolutely called beforehand that we were going to see a lot of boss, and then I think we started seeing the chats the week before and seeing some stuff painted up. I was surprised how many people audibled in. It's funny because we had someone in the Discord ask about the boss opening because we had talked about it a lot and hadn't actually gone like detail to explain it. So I typed it all out, how it works and how to do that opening, and the amount of times I saw that screenshot of that shared or that people were reading it over before a game at the event, because I think a lot of people were putting boss on the table pretty close to for the first time, maybe a game or two before the event.
Yeah, not understanding the lines of play.
Yeah. I definitely saw a couple times where someone tried to do that opening and just completely flubbed it, which is really easy to do. Like, you need to position very precisely. And if you try to go for it and screw it up, it's worse than just doing a regular opening. So
Because you spent a ton of
Yeah.
force and now nothing to fall back on.
yeah, you just do
Yeah.
the basic play and like, well, I can
Yeah.
go over that a little bit when we get to our games, because I had that one of my opponents ran boss and just did a regular opening with him, and I was like, that's weird, and it worked for him probably better than trying to just take everything would have worked.
And there's additional layers there too, right? I mean, Kyle, you guys talked about how it can be terrain dependent, it can be ingress
Yeah.
dependent. Like, it's not just understanding Delta Squad in the opening. There are, again, like I said, multiple layers outside of just the squad to get this opening correct.
Yeah, I table by table, I put a decent amount of thought into both which side I wanted for Delta and which side I was putting Delta on the board. And I typically make my choices for deployment, especially if I'm going second, which I did a lot because I lost a whole lot of roll-offs for the initiative. I'll typically choose that based on what squad my opponents put across. Where here it was very, almost every time was which side gives Delta that better opening. If there is a significant building in the way, it can just completely mess up that opening. But it was interesting to see. Had some really great discussions over the event about Delta. I've said this before, and I will keep saying this until I think there's some more just practice amongst the community as a whole. This is one of the hardest boxes that have come out for this game. There is certainly some exceptional power there, and we will absolutely get to that conversation. But it is not easy. It's not easy early game. It's not easy late game. You have to be able to see the lines and the plays, especially on those boss turns, to be able to make that happen. If you don't, if a boss turn flubs, it can fall apart. Whether that's your force economy, whether that is your advantage you've gained for mobility, it is. Unlike that conversation we were just having about Cassian, I don't think it's a super high floor.
I do think the unit stats help out a little bit in terms of the floor. Like, you're
Yes.
still better off than a lot of other lists if you just play it normally. But there's a lot of room to shoot yourself in the foot.
Turns
if
out
you're
7
trying to get
scores are
tricky.
just pretty good.
Kind of now flipping the script from the lowest Galactic Republic primary, going to the highest and tied with Cassian for 26 games across the event. General Obi-Wan Kenobi, 18 wins, 8 losses for 69% win rate. Again, based on kind of our meta in our community. Not surprising here, I don't think.
It's certainly the highest win rate we've seen.
Yes. Yeah. I
you know,
saw a lot of
from-
blue lightsaber Kenobis out there pointing lightsabers.
Yeah, again, and a lot of our community have been a fan of Kenobi for a long time. There's a lot of practice and comfort there, which goes a long way with Kenobi. But a just shy of 70% win rate is definitely not something we've seen before, and that wasn't just on the back of boss.
Also, when we're going percentages, Sean and I were looking at it beforehand. This is just in the Swiss too. That is actually likely higher when we get into adding Top Cut in there, because he had 4 more games in the Top Cut. Had 4. Yeah.
No, that's absolutely fair. Yeah, so to the point of when it comes to Swiss, the actual most common Obi pairing was Mace, with 9 games played with Obi Mace at a 67% win rate. Obi Kiadi, 7 games at a 71% win rate. And then Obi Boss with 4 games and a 75% win rate, but I think that's 3 of mine and 1 of Cam's. But it was Obi Kiadi and Obi Mace that carried a lot of that win rate through Swiss.
Yeah. Something else I would like to call out about Obi, he had a phenomenal matchup against Cassian, which when there's this many Cassians running around, that can be very good for you. Because he had 86% into Cassian, which is, I think that's the highest win rate anyone has into him in this event.
I think there was a lot of practice for that going into the event.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Of people were expecting the Cassian to be very, very prevalent. And I do think Kenobi does have a strong baseline into that list. When you don't have to wound to hold points, you're already a leg up into a heavy revenge, right?
What do we make of Princess Leia charming the last 10-1 with a 91% win rate?
Oh yeah, that's insane. That's an insane win rate.
I think the majority of the Cassian players that went all the way was on the back of Cassian Leia. And there's a few parts of that with this much Kenobi running around, that's likely the highest mobility pairing you're getting with Cassian. So you're able to get to points faster. You have those revenges in the pocket if a wound is needed to take a point, but you also just have some tough bodies in those lists that are hard for that Obi Mace stylist especially to get off of a point.
To be clear, I don't think there's any thinking involved in saying that the Cassian pairing is what she was doing well with, because she was only played once with anyone else.
Yeah.
It was played once with Han,
boosting.
and then it was Cassian the rest of the games.
Yeah, we talked about that before, how Cassian is just boosting these other Rebel primaries just so much.
But to that point, Cassian didn't do well with any other pairing. It was predominantly PLC. So you could say that PLC is what's boosting Cassian here.
That's fair.
Bold.
Yeah.
It's bold.
I mean, it's the synergy between the two more than anything. I think Cassian can pair with a lot of different things, and PLC is what played into this meta better than anything else.
We also saw a solid run of Cassian with Freedom Fighter Leia.
Yes, that's true.
A lot of the Cassian Freedom Fighter was Michael Stokes.
Yes, yeah, Michael ran her. Yeah.
And that's where the Cassian pairing's coming from there on that win rate. Alex went 4-0 in the Swiss with an all Ewok list. We've got Chirpa, we've got low grade, we've got actual Ewoks in these lists, and Alex had a incredible run through Swiss.
Pathfinders as well too. He was singing the praises, at least
and was
to me.
Very high on them. Yes.
Yeah, very, very high on Pathfinders. Really, really liked them as well too. Yeah.
Sean, you wanted to touch on Empire?
Yeah, Empire. Yeah, tough day, tough weekend for Empire. Highest win percentage we see, only 3 games with Director Krennic at 67%. Past that, we're 50% and lower. Grand Inquisitor 2-2, Moff Gideon 2-3.
They just weren't taken more than anything.
Yeah, they just weren't taken. But traditionally, I think a lot of our other Empire players like Cam and a couple other people who traditionally play Empire have moved off. Brent Grice was still on Empire, and if I was playing in this, I would have played Empire too, so maybe a little bit more representation. But just not being taken right now, fortunately.
Yeah, I think our best Empire representation was John, who did have a great run with Iden Moff. But unfortunately was not able to stay for the top cut.
The saddest story of the entire weekend. Guy comes in, he's like, oh, I'm not sure I'm going to do so well. I don't know. And then top 8's the event. So
we had so many players like that. We had so many players who came and going like, oh, I want to get like one struggle or I want to get one win. Yeah. And then they did well. And I'm just like, what is with all you people just talking shit about yourself? Like,
just that he
believe
couldn't
in yourself.
Stay. He couldn't stay. And I'm like, oh, just call the wife, get the green light. He's like, no, I got to work on Monday. And I'm like, all right, okay.
That did at least end up with all of our 3-1s being able to go to the top cut.
Yes. Yeah, moved Robert up.
Nice.
which was good to see. So amazing. So
All right, do
you guys want to just quickly go over what you guys ran for the day and then rock into your round 1 games?
Yeah, absolutely. I can kick us off on that. So for the event, I brought, I'll just go through all 4 of my squads. We got Ahsoka, Jedi No More, with Nadar Veb and the Arfs. I had Mace Windu with Obi-Wan Kenobi out of hiding and the 501st. I had Kiadi Mundi with Shock T and the Phil's clones. And then finally, Vader Jedi Hunter with Barriss Offee and the Jedi Padawans. Yeah, and I've talked this list to death on the previous cast, so I won't get too in deep on the rationale behind it. But basically, Kiadi Mundi is just really good with at least 3 Jedi. Every single list in there has at least 3 Jedi tags. Mace Windu was my defensive list for if someone's bringing an aggressive melee list against me. Ahsoka was more kind of a general anti aggro list, and also kind of the sleeper hit for if I want to bring some good mid range in terms of being able to dish the damage back out, because both Ahsoka and Nadar hit surprisingly hard, and literally every game I played, my opponents went, "Holy crap, I didn't know they could hit that hard." And it's like, yeah, that's the point. And then finally, Vader was supposed to be my ace in the hole against Delta, but I went a little off book and it didn't go well for me. Kyle, you want to go over your list?
Yeah, so I didn't change anything up despite some temptation, but stuck to my guns on what I've been practicing, what I've been playing. This is the same list that I took to the last event we had at Critical Hit. So this is Kenobi, Rex, Republic Commandos, Boss, Fixer, 7 Scorch, so the full Delta package, Vader, Barriss, Padawans with Kiadi, Shock T, and the 501st. And that was shifting priorities as the mission, and that is something we're going to talk about a bit here.
We got some feelings on that mission.
Yeah, you sure do. Overall, though, I've been playing Kiadi in some form, especially with Vader, for frankly the majority of the year since Kiadi came out. So since Delta dropped, I've been just getting as many games as I possibly can to practice this, and I've practiced some other Delta pairings as well. Whether it's a comfort zone or the best version of the list, Kenobi absolutely has been my preference for pairing with Delta, and I feel like I'm at a point where I could make some solid arguments that that I feel at the very least it is the best version of the list. It has one matchup that I don't like it into, but otherwise it is an incredible list, and quite frankly a rather oppressive one, especially when all the things fire in the right order. I had definitely intended. So overall the event, I end up playing Obi Boss for 6 of the 7 games. That actually wasn't my intention, but the circumstances where I would have dropped Vader, Kiadi just didn't end up happening. That list is again one that I also have a ton of practice into a majority of the meta. It is a list that I am comfortable with into both Delta and Cassian. And it's part of why some of the choices in there are into a heavy displacement list. And that's so if I end up into a Cassian list that I'm not stuck or building myself into a rough game. But my plan for dropping Vader Kiadi was especially into if I saw a list across that had that Cassian Revenge plus a really heavy aggro list. Let's use Boss Hunter as an example there, where I thought there was some liability to Delta there. I could bring this list comfortably into both pairings, and even if I get a little bit list chickened into the Cassian side, I still feel really good about Vader Kiadi with the amount of displacement I have into a Cassian list. But that circumstance didn't really come up with what I had across the table, so I was able to run Boss Obi for the majority of the event.
Amazing. So let's just kind of go through quickly Swiss rounds. We'll just kind of ping pong back and forth. We'll start with Titus and then Kyle and Titus and Kyle. Just brief kind of overview. Round 1, Titus, how'd that go for you?
So round 1, I played against Riley Maxwell. He had a pseudo-separatist list. It was a Dathomirian list with Asajj, Orasang, Magna Guards, and then Mother Talzin, Savage, Night Sisters. Then on the other side, he had a Imperial Troopers list with Krennic, Death Troopers, Shore Troopers, Grand Inquisitor, Death Trooper, Death Trooper.
Yeah.
He had a lot of protection, a lot of tough bodies there on one side, and then on the other side had Revenge and some heavy hitters. So going into that, I knew I wanted displacement in case he brought the troopers, because he brought Empire, plus Talzin hates being force pushed into the corner. So that meant I brought Kiadi, and then I also brought the Ahsoka squad because I needed some way to offset that aggro he could be bringing, and I also just find the mobility from, like, reactive mobility from Nadar and from Ahsoka help to offset both lists really, in order to kind of deal with those tough bodies in Savage or with the troopers. So I ended up bringing those. I won the game 2-0. He had 4 wounds on me. He brought the Dathomirians, and I got 2 wounds on him, but I was able to just kind of push things out of the way. I was able to outbody him on points and win it fairly quick. I won the roll-off and went with Sabotage, which became a bit of a theme. Just a spoiler for the whole event, I didn't play anything but Sabotage all day.
Oh, wow.
So it got pretty rote by the end of it. But no, it was a very good game. It was nice to play against something outside of the standard. I haven't played against Dathomirians in a while, so going into that, it was kind of like, don't necessarily know how this matchup goes, but I felt confident with it. Ahsoka Kiadi's probably coming out of this my favorite list of the bunch, which wasn't what I was expecting ahead of time.
All right.
Kyle, how'd your round 1 go?
Awesome. So I played against Mike round 1. Mike was running a Cassian anchor list, taking a look at the list overall and specifically the mission choices. With me having shifting and Mike having sabotage, this seemed like a really good way to just get Vader and Kiadi on the table with no concerns on mission being a strong factor. So I dropped Vader Kiadi here. Every one of these was a revenge pairing, and again, I have practiced these matchups with the amount of displacement. I think, especially if you go in early and start force eating, I think you can definitely have a good time with it. I know Mike hadn't had too much practice with list coming in, especially on the Jin side. So Mike dropped Cassian with Jin here. This was very much a game based on displacement, especially from an order deck perspective. So Mike won the roll off, went sabotage, and it was basically a game of Mike moves something up onto point. I walk something up and either shove or force push it off. That kind of happened back and forth across, and it was a very good struggle one, but it just kind of went in that pattern, and I ended up on the 4-3 of that trade-off. Mike walks up and takes a point back. I'm able to force push it off. And then once I got my Padawan activation, I was able to swing it because they were able to walk to the midline, hit something, reposition to a back point, and ended off struggle 1 with a 5 score. That kind of held. We went into struggle 2 with me on 5 of the points and had something kind of prepped for the midline, was kind of quick from there. Callus is definitely an impactful thing though. And that's the biggest thing I noticed with Mike's list. He did end up spending like quite a bit of force on Callus rerolls, but it definitely changed my math of, these attacks with Vader dice where I consider them to be pretty certain. Definitely changed some of that math with some of those Callus rerolls, especially on defense. Overall, solid game, but was able to play that displacement and ended up with, and this is one of the notable ones, 0 wounds on my side.
Which, can I just say, 0 wounds when you're playing Vader 1 feels like such a flex.
And was noted by some people watching our event. Yes. Anyways.
Yeah, so but when we went into struggle 2, Mike had a pretty significant amount of his lists that I have left on 1 to 2 damage and strained. which was certainly impactful for struggle 2. And there was definitely, to that point, I stopped a lot of trees. There was a lot of times I absolutely could have wounded where it just would have lost me board control if I took the wound. I was very early on able to get K2 shoved into a corner through an early Barris turn and a force push, and anything I would have wounded would have brought K2 back into the game, and that wasn't worth doing.
Not at all. Not at all. All right. Round 2, Titus, hit us.
So round 2, I played against Cam Pasman, and I honestly wish that I had thought as clear-headedly about bringing K2 back into the game, because that's largely what ended up happening. He also had a Cassian PLC list. So Cam brought Obi-Wan and Boss as one of his squads. He had Cassian and Leia as the other one. He played Cassian in PLC for most of the event, but I didn't have the luxury of knowing that ahead of time. So I wasn't quite sure what he was going to go with. I ended up going Ki-Adi-Mundi and Mace because I wanted something relatively defensive. And in the case that I was going into the revenge list, I do know that it's really nice to have that disarm on Obi-Wan out of hiding. So it felt like kind of the safe pick into here. That's one of the things I had planned for, but it did not end up very good for me. So he ended up out wounding me 5-2. He won it in 2 struggles. Struggle 1 was very good. Struggle 2, I got almost to the point of winning the struggle. I had it on 6 on my side of the tracker, and then I proceeded to do 2 absolutely abysmal Ki-Adi-Mundi turns through no fault of the dice, nothing that I can blame on anything but myself. I had to take the priority point that had Cassian on 1 hit point and K2 on it. I had Mace on the point with them, so I knew I could take the point if I could get K2 out of there. I activate Ki-Adi. He walks up, wounds Cassian, no problem. We're all good. All I have to do is force push K2. But the thing is, I got the free force push on the tree, and my lizard brain goes, ooh, I get this for free. I need to do this now.
Do this
So
first.
I force push him, and then K2 goes, oh, well, you can't push me again, so I'm just going to walk back onto the point. I have lockdown, sucks to be you. I score 0. So then he's pulling the struggle tracker closer to him. I then pull the Shatterpoint, and I go, okay, I need to take 2 points. Neither of the points I can get to are the priority point, but if I take 2 points, it's good enough. So I walk Ki-Adi far enough away that he can kill the rebel commandos that are on one of the points and he can still force push K2 because I still need to get K2 out of there. And I dash with the tactic Mace into a position next to a wall. Now, this is important for later because when I wound the commandos, K2, while I decided to hold off of the force push, he still gets to move. And he wedges himself between that wall and Mace Windu to where I cannot push him. So in both cases, I just completely sewered myself, did not take more than 1 point over 2 activations, and he just pulled it all the way back, and I lost the struggle, and both of them were just abysmal misplays on my part. That's not to say he didn't play well. Like he won struggle 1, he did really well. He saw my mistakes and went, okay, well, I'm going to deal with that. But boy, was I kicking myself coming out of this game.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like a tough one. But
As much as I'm sad that you lost this one, Cam had a great run, and I'm so happy for him.
He's a great player, and I'm very glad he was able to do as well as he did.
Despite what he says, to be clear.
I'm gonna say, yeah. Is he a great player in his head? I'm not so sure. We gotta break him of that at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
there you go. Yes. The fire alarm.
There was a bit of that, so that was interesting.
Cool. Kyle, your round 2, sir.
So my round 2 was against Craig. And Craig is an incredible player. This was a game I expected to play some point in the day, and we're apparently we're rolling into it. We're rolling into it round 2.
I believe I got cursed at when I paired this round.
Yeah, it was is biased. But this was a really good game. So other than that, it was on First Contact because apparently everybody hates me. I'm very comfortable with Boss Obi on First Contact. I think it actually is a very strong mission for them. But I just don't like playing it. Craig took his Mando riff list. This was the Mandalorian, Bosk, Han and Chewie with Riff, Django, and the Bounty Hunters. So a very scoundrel riff list. I was chatting with Craig before the game, and he was absolutely going to be taking the Weekway Pirates and didn't want to play something unpainted and didn't get it done in time. So we had Bounty Hunters. But this was a solid game. This was pretty rough struggle one for Craig. I did get the boss opening for this one. So this
Gross.
So
Gross.
I'm pretty sure, and this is going to be mixing up a few First Contact games, so I apologize to anyone for when I get this wrong at some point. So this ended up, I flipped, I think it was the Commandos first, and we were on the arrow that basically did not favor the side the Commandos were on, but favored Delta's side of the board. So I knew just activating the Commandos could basically only get me my forward midpoint, and that was it. So I reserved the Commandos, and I'm fairly certain flip Shatterpoint here. So flip Shatterpoint and then we're jumping into Clever Ploy. So this allows me to pull Obi out of the deck into reserve, have Obi in reserve without it costing me anything, and then did the Delta thing. So they all went right. If I remember correctly, Craig had Django on the point to the right. So Boss had a target to fire at here. And was able to move himself 7 Scorch, so take the midpoint and then move 2 bodies over to the right to be able to body that point. I think from there, Craig and I both were just pulling cards from that right side of the board. So I think we both went through the full squads of what was on the right side of the board, so just affecting that objective before we even touched the left. Struggle 1 went fairly quickly here, but we had a very long struggle 2. It was also interrupted by the fire alarm. Mando ended up super relevant. I don't actually think, other than bodies, the list doesn't have a super great way to deal with Mando himself on a point, so wherever Mando was running, I was just kind of walking away from. We had a couple flips of this, but it was very much playing the game of score 2, take a wound, score 2, take a wound. And it actually just came down to I was able to more consistently get those wounds than Craig was on his side. So I ended up with an advanced momentum game. I think struggle 2 ended here, Sean, just as you were calling mission critical. And I'm pretty sure this was my longest game of the day, and that was all through struggle 2.
Yeah, I think I called mission critical, and you guys were like a turn, or you were on your turn or something like that, and then
I was literally, I had just scored and wrapped it up. But great
awesome.
game,
cool.
Craig's a
Titus,
great
round
player.
3, cool. Round 3, engage, sir.
So round 3, I played against Applejacks, and this was my first game in a competitive setting into Delta. And he had a full Republic Premier. Any of them, he could have been going with Delta, or he could have, so he had Plo Koon with Barriss and the 501st. That one, I figured he wouldn't go with Delta, but the other 2 lists were General Kenobi with Rex and Commandos. And then he had Hunter with Fixer 212, finally Boss with Pawns and 7 Scourge. So a little bit out of the norm. I knew Boss and Hunter get played together, but I also had an inkling that Obi could play with Boss or with Plo Koon. So I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to be facing. I knew I wanted to play Vader because I didn't want to be list locked going into round 4. I knew Vader was, my plan had always been Vader is played with Kiadi 99% of the time. I knew I like it with Ahsoka and Nadar, and In this case, I was worried about the aggro that Hunter and Boss would bring to bear, but the plan had always been to play with Cam. And in hindsight, I should have just stuck to the plan because I think a large problem I had with this was mobility. We still had a very good game. We went three struggles. Applejacks took it in the third struggle, and it was a very high attrition game. We both had 6 wounds. I had actually cleared off 7 Scorch from the table by the end of struggle 1. It was Vader just enables this list to just keep killing things consistently. But obviously, I'm also damaging myself. So Boss is able to clean up very well and pick up those wounds that get him forced back. So it ended up just being a lot of back and forth in terms of killing stuff. And going into struggle 3, we had the direct across the middle struggle come up, and I wasn't able to wake things up, whereas his units were waking up a little more consistently. And in fact, 7 Scorch being out of the deck might have been a benefit in that case, because there's just less cards in the deck and he's able to get the units that he needs to wake up. Whereas my supports, they both ended up pretty much, well, one of them ended up at the bottom, and then the ARFs were just way out of position thanks to just some early pushes in the game. And I wasn't able to take that third struggle. But it was very close. We played a very tight game. I think our momentum was at like 2 and 3 on either side of the struggle tracker by the end of struggle 3. So like it was anyone's game.
Amazing. Awesome. Kyle, what's your round 3 look like?
So round 3 was against Matt. Matt had played Obi Kiati for his first 2 rounds. I was kind of expecting his separatist list here, just from, again, we're round 3 and hasn't been played yet. And I think Matt knew well enough that playing Obi into Boss is a little rough. So he went the separatist route and went to, okay, let's see if we can throw some damage out there. I lost the roll off on this one again, so I am 0 for 3 on the roll off so far. But both of us brought shifting. So knowing that this was a boss play for me for sure. Both of us had a great opening. So I think this was the one game of the day where I actually just flipped Rip Boss first card, but Matt had flipped Kalani first on his turn. So we both did the opening thing that our lists do, and those are not equal anymore.
Far from it.
But Kalani is still a great opening to a list, so he was able to get, the Aquas up a bit, and he got Kalani and the B1 on the midline. I then flip into Boss, do the whole thing, but based on where the terrain was, I was able to get the far point that he wasn't able to get something on. I was able to tie a body in the midline. I was able to get Boss over, do some damage to the B1s, and shove them off the point. So we were a score 3 and a tie in the middle, and was a great start to struggle 1. Struggle 1 went did go for a bit here with some back and forth. My defensive dice were on fire this game, and especially with the expertise that Delta brings. Was just Matt was struggling to get some attacks through in a meaningful way. On the flip side, my attack rolls were not doing much into droids that they absolutely should be able to do a lot into. So it ended up a bit of a back and forth for this struggle. Went into a struggle to flip, and there was kind of Matt had the choice of one side where neither of us really controlled anything, or the other side where he had where he currently had 2, but was where the concentration of my bodies that I had left to activate were. So we had a good discussion on kind of what maybe would have been the better choice there. Ultimately, I was able to just flood the 2 points closest to me. He had a back point that I literally couldn't touch, but I was just putting hunkered bodies on the 2 points, and There was a couple good Grievous turns in there, which definitely were putting some wounds out. But overall, there wasn't enough to deal with the amount of bodies, and due to the quantity of bodies, despite some intent on an Asajj turn, it was actually pretty difficult to be able to force push anyone out. So had this one, got this in 2 struggles. I was 2 wounds on this one to his 3, so that was the B1s double wounded. And ended up off the table. But that was the only thing I think I got any wounds to, despite many attacks into the Aqua Droids that just didn't get to where I was hoping for.
The Aquas are tough.
They're
Real tough.
deceptively tough.
Yeah. All right, final round of the Swiss. Titus, how did it go for you?
So for this one, I played against Shatter Daddy, who has the best Longshanks name of anyone else I've ever
Top
played
tier.
against.
We love our Shatter Daddy. Ooh, yeah.
So this was another person who had that one Rebel, one Republic list with Cassian and Boss. In this case, he had Boss Hunter, with Boss bringing the basic Delta Squad box, and Hunter taking Crosshair and Echo and Tech. So both kind of just playing the boxes. With Cassian, he has the Cassian box with K2 Rebel Pathfinders. And then PLC is the only one where it's not just bringing the box. She instead had Callus and the Rebel Commandos. So again, going into this, it's kind of that I don't know which he's going to pick. I don't really know what to expect here because they're very different lists. The only thing I know is that they are both able to dish out wounds pretty effectively. So I ended up going with Ahsoka Kiadi because at this point, I just wanted to go with something I knew covered all my bases and I'm comfortable with. And we ended up going 2 struggles, 5 wounds each. It was on Sabotage Showdown like everything else. This was actually the first time I lost the roll off, but he also had Sabotage, so it was still playing Sabotage. It was a good game. It ended fairly quickly, but we were just kind of going back and forth trading off those wounds. And in this case, Ahsoka was able to make use of that to tie up points very effectively. And it ended up going my way this time.
Amazing. Great. Kyle, round 4.
Round 4. So this was against Trevor, who I am going to get the privilege to play against twice this event. But Trevor, round 4 in the Swiss. Trevor's a fantastic dude, and has been on the Han train for basically the entirety of the time he's been playing this game. And I'll say this a lot, and I'll say this again here. Reps are the most important thing. We talk about list strength and the power of a list and what's best in the meta all the time and what's winning events. At the end of the day, what is winning events is people with a list they are taking with intent, with matchups they have practiced, and know what to take into what. And I think Trevor demonstrated that very, very well here, playing a Han anchor list. I think the only Han at the event.
Yep, the only Han. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
and as you said, Kyle, he is a prime example of putting the time in.
This is reps with this list. So for this game, Trevor drops Han Cassian. I take Obi Boss. I win. This is I want to say my only roll off win for the entire event. Yes, it is.
Which is important because he has first contact.
He does have first contact. I mean, this doesn't go my way for the last round, but we'll get there when we get there. So I win this roll off. I get shifting priorities, and the dumb thing happens. And the dumb thing happens in the best possible role of circumstances I could possibly have it happen in. So my first flip is Fixer. Fixer is the one absolutely guaranteed reserve. If I flip it first turn, I am not putting Fixer up to die. So I flip Fixer, I reserve. I flip General Kenobi. Kenobi does Patience, swaps with Fixer. Fixer goes to the bottom of the deck. I then flip, I think it was Shatterpoint.
Yes. Shatterpoint, which turned into a boss.
Which turns into the boss opening. So this was take the midline, do the thing. I did decide to move Fixer up in this, which isn't something I do all the time, but I just wanted to make sure I got everything up and to hold these points. So I just had boss take the midline, put as many bodies up as we could. This turned into Trevor just wasn't able to really react to that. I think it was a Han flip, put some damage on Fixer, and put a commando up on the point. And then the next turn was, I believe, a 7 Scorch flip, which led to a 5 score on my first scoring. And that's kind of where struggle 1 went from there. I apologize if anything goes in a different order than that, but Trevor did a really good job throughout those scoring turns of just getting things out and either forcing me to drop hunkers on things, or setting up for some ideal struggle 2. Now, that just happens partly out of deployment with a lot of shifting. But he did a really good job of getting his commandos out, getting Han out, and setting up some good stuff there. So we flip into struggle 2, and he's got 2 out of the 3. One of those has K2. There is a near 0% chance of me taking anything in this struggle, so I just did not fight for it. This was my one struggle drop of the day. So this was the only struggle that I lost throughout the event. Trevor played this very, very well, and honestly had a decent setup going into struggle 3, which was a lot on the back of Han. This ended up another 0 wound game for me, because K2 was in position every single time where, again, if I decide to wound something here, I'm going to end up in a worse spot than I currently am. So I just didn't wound. And it really came down to just tough bodies on points. Struggle 3 was very much of, I focused as many bodies on 2 points as I possibly could. There ended up with a pretty heavy cluster in the middle of, I think I had Fixer, Hunkered, 7 Scorch, one of the bodies of 7 Scorch in the middle, and then 1 Republic Commando in the middle, all hunkered. So 3 tough bodies, all hunkered, and with a tiebreaker, it just made it really tough for Trevor to kind of gain any ground in that third struggle. And that's with having the right bodies. K2 came up at one point, but was very quickly shoved back away. That's kind of where it went from there. But this was a great game. 3 struggles, and Trevor played Han very well. He got 3 wounds on me, and I think every single time one of those wounds, it led to Han moving in a very favorable position. And again, that just comes down to that expertise. And that was the other piece. We're looking at the wounds. I know if I gain momentum here, Trevor's going to gain some more. And keeping that back on that scoring, I think was a priority.
Amazing. Cool. So that wraps up our first day. Everybody had, great games. Some of us went out for a fantastic meal after. So then we rock into day 2, bright and early again, 8 a.m. Kyle, this is your quarterfinals game.
Yeah. So round 1 was Rob. Rob played Vader Cam. The other option he had was Obi Mace. And he's got a lot more comfort with the Obi Mace list. I think that was a lot of what got him through Swiss. He'd only played this a couple times, and I know, despite playing a lot of Republic, was also pretty new to Kiadi here as well. And I think we've talked about this list a ton. I think his list was the same as mine. For Vader Cam, I do think this absolutely has some play into Delta, but it just this was a couple pieces. One was just out mobility. I was able to keep things back, so they ended up kind of just out of range of that melee range, where I think there's a lot of times in that list you have to take cover to get an extra little movement and just do the force push. But that takes absolutely some practice with the list to know when to do that and when's the right time to make that move. Frankly, this was a pretty quick game based on scoring. I think terrain had a bit to do with that. Where Rob was just kind of having some trouble getting some things up on points to meet me there, and I was able to kind of give him. He ended up, I think it was Barris and Padawan's bottom of deck, and I was able to have either Boss or 7 Scorch, just kind of condition and shove them both up. So they both units had a rough start to their activations and just weren't able to make an impact once we got into struggle 2.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think the mobility difference there really
It's 100%.
shows when the order deck doesn't go your way.
Yeah.
Because it is absolutely a list that's order dependent.
And Padawans at bottom of deck is not what I want in that case.
No.
Rolling into semifinals.
So this was against Cam, who Titus played during the Swiss. I really expected Cam to go the Cassian Leia list. He was on a very, very hot run with the list. This ended up another early boss. I don't actually think it was the opening this game, but who knows if I've got that right here. I know there was a couple that they didn't quite happen, but I think it was second or third. I think it was my second activation by the time we got there. Cam won the roll off. We played First Contact. I think we ended up in this being a pretty quick struggle one again, and this was due to just absolutely bodying the midpoint. So we got the X for First Contact on this one, and this ended up with that early boss turn, and I just put as many bodies onto that midpoint hunkered as I possibly could. And it just, the one thing where I think there's different Cassian pairings where I think Obi's stronger or weaker. And into Leia, I think, is one of the stronger ones, because I don't think her revenge trigger is going to do much into a hunkered unit. I don't expect it to do much. Obviously, that can change based on dice. But I think a lot of this list has some trouble hitting through those hunker breakpoints into Obi.
Yeah, Steadfast and Protection is also really good against PLC.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's kind of how this went. There was a little bit of flip Cam's way with a K2 activation, but I was able to shove him off and pin with Fixer and kind of flip the point back my way for struggle one. Throughout struggle one, I was kind of getting damage on things, up with a lot of, again, with the cluster that ended up on that midpoint, had a lot of damage on the units. Struggle two opened with Cam in a really good spot, but a pretty early boss bomb in that struggle led to all 3 wounds I had was one boss bomb on that center point.
Man, and Cam just when that happened, everybody in the room knew.
It's so demoralizing. I don't blame him.
First of all, you could hear him. This is bullshit.
I was completely out of force, and it led to me having force for my next activations. And it kind of spiraled from there. And K2 not getting a reaction on any of those wounds.
Yeah, that's why I was beside him. He's like, well, I don't get half my reactions here.
Yeah, it was one Cassian, one. Yeah, Leia still gets hers.
Yeah, Leia gets hers. Yeah, it was Cassian and Leia.
But again, same thing. That Leia revenge kind of just bounced off Boss, who was hunkered by the time he made the attack, and actually allowed Boss to move back to the last point for a 4-point swing. It is what it is. We'll discuss this a bit more. If there is anything, if Boss is a problem, it is due to this bomb, and frankly, nothing else. Opening aside, that how much that bomb can do can be absolutely absurd. And again, this, that
it does so much for one ability.
Yeah. Like that center point was no longer active. So not only did I wound 3 units at the same time, I got all 3 units that I had on that point off, all hunkered, and Rex was on there. So I'm also healing things up at the same time this is all happening.
Gross.
It was
gross. All right.
Let's. You recovered 5 force.
And I recovered 5 force.
Let's move away from this absolute massacre and talk about the final round. You get paired up again with your round 4 opponent in Trevor.
Yeah,
for the finals of Force Convergence.
Go into the finals with Trevor. Trevor wins the roll-off and gets First Contact. And I know this is going to be a tougher game, and I don't think the score represents this, but Trevor played an absolutely incredible game here.
Yes.
So of the Han pairings, Trevor actually opts for Han Luke this time. Luke carrying Obi-2 and Bar 2, with Han just being Han's box. And a couple reasons for this choice. I think Trevor came out of the game in the finals and said, well, clearly the revenges don't matter if I'm able to win the game without doing any wounds, so let's go for something that might hamper the attacks a bit. Ironically, I actually think that would have been a better play on shifting priorities. But at the end of the day, I think the bigger factor in this game in particular was that mobility factor of just on first contact being able to get out so quickly, where that Luke squad has a bit of a harder time with that. And I think Hana actually helps Luke out a lot. Getting Luke advanced up the board is definitely a valuable thing. I think Struggle 1 went pretty quickly. Struggle 2 was a slog. And Trevor pulled out all the stops for this game. I think we counted by the end. I think we flipped the objectives 5 times.
Yeah, 5 times total. And you got that little slick Luke play on the left hand side when he was flipping the 3 in the semicircle around there. You got that slick little Luke play.
Yeah,
on you.
so from my
good.
perspective of the board, this was the right hand side of the board, and he flipped into the 3 objectives that were on that side of the board and the 1 on the other far side. And this was the side where Luke was, Obi-2 was, so getting attacks through was difficult, and I really didn't have anything. That was the Obi side of the board, but Rex had kind of left already. So it was just the only thing I had over there was Obi and the commando. So Luke jaunts over, slaps the commandos, doesn't get the wound, and I think I'm slick, so I drop the hunker, I dash them away, and Trevor just kind of gets the right positioning to be able to follow up on the attack, get Luke a jump, and actually led me dashing away led to him being able to take the point closest to me as well that turn, and fully wounding the commandos. So that was a rough play from my side for the day. I thought I was slick and out of range of what Luke could follow up with the commandos and chase, but I was wrong, and led to, I think Trevor got a 4 score. That
yes.
So
did, yeah.
obviously I said absolutely not. We're not doing this anymore, and flipped the struggle again. But this is exactly the type of game that I absolutely hate on first contact, and is every example of my issues with the mission. But it basically ended up on a rotation where 2 of the 3 layouts favored where I was, and 1 that heavily favored Trevor. There was a really good back and forth. I think we both had a good amount of momentum by the end of Struggle 1. I think where the lead happened, or in Struggle 2, and I think where kind of the lead for me kind of came from, ended up with a couple good boss wounds, because I was able to more freely wound in this matchup, which kept my force going. And some boss wounds at the right times led to me being able to spend force for the flip, where Trevor kept being forced to spend momentum on the flip. So yeah, Sean, go ahead.
Sorry. And I think he also, maybe, I don't know if he forgot, but Fixer tie-braked Han on the right-hand side. That was problematic, if I have that correct.
Yes. Yeah, that definitely happened.
I just don't think he was able to do anything about it.
Yeah.
No, but I think that was a turn where he thought he was flipping more than what, or at least stopping more than
right. And then you said, "Oh no, Fixer's a tiebreaker," and he was kind of like womp womp, and he didn't score as much.
Yeah, and dude, it's a long 2 days. There was another pretty significant misplay that I made near the end of the game on a turn where I just had a plan, activated Fixer, was going to dash 7 Scorch, or one of the 2, closer to be able to rule 17, which would have closed off the game, and I forgot to dash them before I attacked. But honestly, that is the end of 7 games over 2 days. So I think Trevor and I both had a couple moments that game that didn't that wasn't our best examples of play, but this was, I definitely think this was the tightest game over the event. Trevor played the list that he knows very, very well, and Obi-2 was kind of a pain in the ass. I think if Obi-2 ended up a little closer to center rather than where he ended up just kind of being forced to go based on activation order, I think this could have definitely been a tighter game for sure.
Yeah, much harder.
I was absolutely floored with the things he could do with early release Rebels. Like, never see these guys on the table, and Trevor takes them, and it's just like, it's completely different than seeing anyone else play them. He does such a good job.
Yeah, And this isn't the first time we've seen this. Han is a barely talked about primary when it comes to top level play. And we have seen this over the last year and a bit of this game, I think, at this point, where no one's talking about Han, no one's talking about Han. Oh, Han just went to finals at a GT. Han just won a GT. Whatever it ends up being. Because I think there's something there, but it rewards practice, reps, and knowing your matchups.
Yeah. So in conclusion here, a fantastic finals game. I don't think I would have wanted anything else here. And with that, and I mentioned jokingly at the start of the episode, that crowns Kyle as not only the winner of Force Convergence, but also the first Canadian winner of a Canadian GT. So congratulations on that. That is an amazing accomplishment.
Ooh,
as well,
is that
too.
actually true? What about BC? Is there anyone Canadian win any of the BC GTs? That might be true.
Have they had one yet?
Yeah, we had Wet Coast.
Okay, I wasn't sure if the last one they had was an official
I think
GT.
there was a GT.
Okay.
At least
So in
Ontario. Let's call it Ontario.
Yeah.
Ontario.
Kyle, congratulations on being the first Canadian winner of a grand tournament in Ontario.
Yeah, there we go.
That is a great accomplishment. You can
Absolutely. I just didn't want to forget those guys because I'm actually heading that way at the beginning of November for their GT, which was a little bit of a turn of events, but I'm really excited to.
And are they ready for you? Jeff already has the bring it on. Bring it on.
Oh yeah, I have had the messages for sure.
That guy's
really
probably fired up to see you.
And they know
cross
what
the
you're going
pond.
to play. I
Do
can't see
they?
you making too many
I don't
changes
know.
going into that.
I feel like there's a part of me that wants to make some changes, but also I'm not sure I have time between now and
Kyle goes to BC with Empire. Surprise, bitches! I'm playing Moffat Island. No,
I don't know how those
So-
models work.
Do we have any last thoughts on the meta coming out of this? Any changes of mind in terms of how we see things?
Boss is really good. I don't think that's not a surprise.
Yeah, boss is too good.
High risk, high reward.
I think the opening is rough, and to be quite frank, I had some order deck variants in my favor this event in one way or another. Again, even a couple of those were fishing a couple cards in based on order deck, but the order deck still allowed me to get that, if not first, early. And I do think it can, whether you're doing Boss Hunter, you're doing Boss Obi, or any other pairing, I think Delta's the stronger half of the list in any of those. And when you have to start with the other half, that can definitely be a very different experience with the list. I've definitely had it happen sometimes, and it still ends up typically a comeback by the time Delta starts activating, because it still is some very impactful turns. They're very strong. I don't think unbeatable, but what I can say, if you're going to an event soon, you need to know what this does, what it is capable of, and have a plan. Do I think there's actually a few plans that you can take into that and do very well into it? Yes. Do I think it's going to be a rough time if you don't have a plan? Also, yes.
Yeah, I think just to
Agreed.
kind of sum up, my meta vibe and kind of the next question that we have here, where do we go from here? My vibe is I'm a little bit concerned, honestly, because we know we're done with releases for the year. We know we have Morgan and Balin coming, but of course, Q2, we don't know if that's the beginning. We don't know if that's the end. So my concern becomes, how long are we going to be in this period of time for, and how is that going to affect the overall meta? How is it going to affect players, both competitive and casual? And I'm concerned maybe in terms of the where we go from here. Are we going to be coming into a bit of a dip or a lull period with not only the holidays coming out with no new releases, but then kind of where we are with Delta and Cassian being so powerful and such a percentage of the meta of events? So that's kind of where I'm at right now. The glimmering hope is that I hope players will continue to be creative, try and find new things. We see Chris Sampson playing Iden and Vader 1, which I think was a little bit of a glimmer of hope. Now, he said it's going to be more testing. He did very well with it. He said it's great into Delta. So I hope we keep seeing the phenomenal players within our community continuing to push the envelope, try different combinations of units, and maybe find things that other people are not thinking of.
I think my biggest concern right now isn't even necessarily the aggressiveness or the damage of anything. It's the amount of movement we have in the game is just gotten so escalated compared to early days. It feels like a completely different game. And when you can advance 3 times with very little effort on, like, your positioning just stops mattering at a certain point. Like, it's in that part, I feel it takes away some of the fun of the game. That's my main concern with not just Delta, but just with Cassian, even with when Iden was running all over the place. Like, you're getting these units with extreme amounts of movement that can move 3-4 times during their turn and also are moving something else and also get to move outside of their turn. And it's just, I find those are consistently the problem pieces, and I don't feel like the game is built for that, especially shifting. Like, it was built for a different era.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and all of these movement based high aggro are always taking advantage of shifting priorities as the mission.
Yeah, so that was going to be kind of my final point there. Sean, you mentioned Chris Sampson's Iden Vader. He also took Riff Mando there, and we saw both players in the top 2 at LVO both taking Riff. I'm sure lots of people are going to cover LVO in more detail, but really some cool lists coming out of that top 8 from some great players that aren't Boss or Cassian. So huge congrats to Chris for taking down LVO. That is a massive event, and with overall, I think, a full list of not exactly what people were expecting at the event. But to that point on shifting, I think we've seen every meta of this game really defined by a very powerful list on shifting priorities. You look back to the early days, and you had Separatists and Republic, and frankly, Separatists were just better at playing shifting priorities than as the only mission that existed. We then shift into Vader's release pretty early on, and we see Vader 1 without any tag restrictions, very heavily dominating on shifting priorities. And again, there was definitely some other play there. We saw Mother Talzin put some kind of counterplay into that with, our first strong revenge trigger. But even that meta ended up with, hey, you've got this melee aggro list doing a ton of damage, and you've got your revenge list that's kind of holding it back from dominating things. That then shifts into Iden and Kanan holding up those spots. And this being our previous meta, and I think definitely the more defined one at the very least, where I do think we hit a point where it was tough for some other lists to compete in that meta, just with how dominating Iden was at top tables, and frankly Kanan was into anything else that tried to go any sort of wound route, and turn those lists off as well. I think we shift into where we're at today, and we have kind of that same dynamic where we've got Delta Squad coming out with, at the very least, aggressive mobility and some consistent damage from a wound strategy. Cassian really being the backing of that heavy revenge, which is, keeping any other innovation for a heavy aggro list kind of at bay. But I do think, and I will say this definitively, that I think our current top lists are less powerful than the ones compared to the rest of the game than the ones we saw last meta. I do think there is more options and counterplay that we can definitely see. But I also see that there's some primaries being left behind in that. And the rebalance did some incredible work in bringing Republic front and center into the meta. I would love to see some love for Separatists at some point. I think the Rift Box was a great injection there, but we don't know the timeline on when that's going to come. I do know that there's still plenty of toys to play with, especially from a Swiss perspective. And again, we see Trevor doing that at our event. We see, and we saw some spice at LVO as well, but that list expertise that plans into the matchups, even if it's the big meta boogeymen, go in with a plan, have the practice and reps into it. There is still an opportunity for anything in this game right now. Again, we saw Ewoks go, and again, Ewoks with actual bears in it, go 4-0. in the Swiss. So
Swiss,
I don't want to doom and gloom this because I do think there is still plenty of opportunity there. But we definitely are seeing some lists that are taking advantage of some core game mechanics. I think Revenge at this point is a core part of Shatterpoint, and I think we're seeing that design continue to push Revenge triggers to I think where we may have turned the dial up a little too far on the Revenge piece, but.
Yeah.
And then Delta's such an interesting spot because I don't think we're ever going to see Delta at a super dominating win rate because I think it is hard to play. It's hard to play right. And I think if you have the reps into it, there are some weak points of the list that you can absolutely take advantage on. But if all things go Delta's way, whether that's mission roll off, whether that's order deck, there's also times where you can get very little counterplay options, which doesn't feel great, honestly, from the person playing it or the person across the table.
Awesome. All right. Some final things here we want to touch on before we wrap up. We have a 3-Mirror event coming up October 25th. Critical Hit Gaming Lounge. If you are listening to this and you are able to come out to that, hit us up in the Discord or message us so we can get you some details so you can join us for that one. Also, since we are Canadian, next week, Monday is going to be an off week for us because it is our Canadian Thanksgiving. So our next episode that you will hear us will be recorded on October 20th, dropping Thursday, October 23rd. Let everybody out there know, and I'll also drop that into the Discord as well. Per usual, make sure you join us in our Discord. Link will be in the show notes. It's been hard to keep up. So much chatter. Everybody's talking. Yak, 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 yak. We've got a great community forming there.
Yeah, it's been incredible.
It has taken us all by surprise. I think how many people actually care about the blah, blah, blah that we do on this podcast every single week about this game. But we love and appreciate every single person that cares about us. Anything else, guys, before we wrap it up?
No, I am excited for a holiday weekend. And so we're taking a bit of a break here, but I am excited to get back to it.
Sweet. That 23rd episode is going to be a fun one. It's one of my ideas. I think it's going to be real spicy and real fun. So make sure you don't miss it. All right, guys. Good night.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.